The discarded Luna who vanished into winter. They called it a marriage. Miranda Hale knew better. It was a cage with vows. Locked inside Frostfang Keep as Alpha Kale Draven's unwanted bride, she was nothing more than breathing diplomacy, a signed treaty in human form. But one storm-soaked night shattered every cold wall between them, leaving her with something no political alliance could contain: his child, growing quietly beneath her heart. And when she overheard the truth that she was still just a pawn, never a person, Miranda made the choice that would shake two kingdoms. She disappeared into the killing cold of the frontier, alone. Stay with us until the end to see how her survival rewrites everything. Drop a comment with your city below, and hit that like button if you're ready for this journey. The wedding had no music. Miranda stood in the great hall of Frostfang Keep, with her hands folded in front of her like a schoolgirl awaiting punishment. The stone walls swallowed sound. No laughter, no cheers, no clinking of glasses, just the low crackle of torches and the shuffle of boots as two rival packs stood on opposite sides of the aisle, watching her like she was a bomb they hoped wouldn't go off. She wore white because someone told her to. The dress didn't fit right. It bunched at the shoulders and hung too loose at the waist, like it had been made for someone else. Maybe it had. Maybe they'd pulled it from storage, dusted it off, and decided it was good enough for a bride nobody wanted. Kale Draven stood at the front, arms crossed, jaw set. He didn't look at her, not once. His eyes stayed fixed somewhere above her head, like she was a smudge on a map he'd rather ignore. He was taller than she'd expected, broader, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and a scar that split his left eyebrow in two. Handsome, if you liked the kind of man who looked like he could snap you in half without breaking a sweat. Miranda didn't. The officiant droned through the vows in a monotone that made the whole thing feel like a business transaction, which she supposed it was. This wasn't love. It wasn't even like. It was a deal brokered in blood and borders, a treaty signed with her name because her father had run out of options, and Kael's council had decided a marriage was cheaper than another year of war. "Do you, Miranda Hale, take this man?" "I do," she said, cutting him off. She wanted it over with. Kael's eyes flicked to her for half a second. Something moved behind them, annoyance, maybe, or surprise, but it was gone before she could name it. "Do you, Kale Draven?" "I do." No hesitation, no emotion, just two words delivered like a report. They didn't kiss. The officiant gestured vaguely toward them, as if to suggest it, but Kael turned and walked out before the man could finish speaking. The crowd shifted, uncertain, and Miranda stood there with her hands still folded, feeling the weight of 100 stares and not 1 ounce of respect. Her father caught her arm as she moved to follow. "You did well," he said quietly. His face was gray, worn down by years of fighting a war he couldn't win. "This is good for everyone." Miranda pulled her arm free. "Good for you, maybe." He flinched, but didn't argue. What could he say? She was right. She'd grown up hearing stories about the border wars, how the Hale Pack and the Draven Pack had fought over territory for 3 generations, spilling blood on both sides until the ground itself seemed stained with it. Her older brother had died in a skirmish 2 years ago. Her mother had stopped speaking after that, just sat by the window staring at nothing until one morning she didn't wake up at all, and now Miranda was the price of peace. Her father had come to her 6 weeks ago, looking older than she'd ever seen him. "There's been a proposal," he'd said, "from Alpha Draven." She'd known immediately what kind of proposal he meant. "No." "Miranda." "I said no." But her father had kept talking, about the losses they'd suffered, about the pack members who were tired of burying their children, about how this was the only way to stop the bleeding. "You're asking me to marry a man I've never met," she'd said, "to live with people who've killed our family. I'm asking you to save what's left of our family." In the end, she'd said yes. Not because she wanted to, not because she believed it would work, but because she looked at her father's face and saw a man drowning, and she didn't know how to say no to a drowning man. Now, standing in the great hall with a husband who'd already walked away from her, Miranda wondered if she'd just agreed to drown with him. Frostfang Keep was a fortress, not a home. It squatted on the edge of the northern frontier like a stone fist, all sharp angles and narrow windows that let in more cold than light. The halls smelled like wet rock and old smoke, and every door was too heavy, every room too empty. They gave her a chamber in the east wing. It was large, she'd give them that. High ceilings, a fireplace big enough to roast a pig, a bed that could have slept 4 people comfortably. But it was cold. Not just temperature-wise, though the fire never seemed to catch properly. Cold in the way that unused things are cold. Like no one had lived here in years. Like no one was expected to. A servant brought her dinner on a tray. Bread, cheese, some kind of stew that had gone lukewarm. The woman was young, maybe 18, with pale hair pulled back in a tight braid. "What's your name?" Miranda asked. The girl startled. "Lena, ma'am?" "You don't have to call me ma'am. Miranda's fine." Lena's eyes went wide, like Miranda had suggested something scandalous. "I couldn't. You're the Luna." "I'm a person who'd like to know your name." The girl set down the tray and backed toward the door. "Is there anything else you need, ma'am?" Miranda sighed. "No, thank you, Lena." The door clicked shut and Miranda was alone again. She ate slowly, methodically, tasting nothing. The stew was bland, the bread was stale. She didn't care. Food was just something to do, a way to mark time between one empty hour and the next. When she finished, she stood at the window and looked out at the courtyard below. Guards walked their routes. Servants hurried between buildings. Life continued, busy and purposeful, and she was a ghost watching it happen. The first week passed in a blur of nothing. Miranda woke, ate, sat, slept. She tried reading the books in her chamber, dusty volumes about pack histories and territorial disputes, but the words slid off her brain like water off stone. She tried sketching, using charcoal and paper she found in a drawer, but her hands felt clumsy and her drawings looked like a child's. Mostly, she waited. For what, she wasn't sure. For Kael to visit, maybe. For someone to explain what she was supposed to do. For this strange new life to start making sense. None of those things happened. Kael didn't come. No one explained anything, and the days kept stacking up, identical and gray. In the second week, Miranda tried to make herself useful. She found the head housekeeper, a stern woman named Margot, with iron gray hair and a face like a hatchet, and asked if there was work she could do. Margot looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "Work, ma'am?" "Yes, mending, organizing, cooking, anything." "You're the Luna." "I know what I am. I'm asking what I can do." Margot's expression didn't change. "The Luna doesn't work. The Luna presides." "Over what?" "The household, in theory." Miranda crossed her arms. "And in practice?" "In practice, I run the household. I've been doing it for 20 years. You don't need to concern yourself." "So what do I concern myself with?" Margot blinked slowly. "That's not my place to say, ma'am." Miranda tried a different approach. "Is there anyone I should meet? Any duties I should know about?" "The Alpha handles all duties." "I meant my duties." "You don't have any." Margot said it matter-of-factly, like she was stating the weather. "You're here as part of the treaty, that's all." The words landed like a slap. Miranda felt her face heat, but she kept her voice level. "I see. Thank you for your time." She walked away before Margot could respond, her hands shaking with something she didn't want to name. Anger, maybe. Or shame. Or the horrible, creeping realization that everyone here saw her exactly the way Kael did, as a piece of furniture that had been delivered and now just took up space. In the third week, she tried exploring. The keep was massive, a maze of corridors and staircases that seemed to lead nowhere. She found a library on the second floor, shelves packed with military histories and ledgers. She found an armory, weapons gleaming on the walls. She found a chapel, small and dark and smelling of incense. What she didn't find was a place that felt like hers. The guards watched her wherever she went, not threatening exactly, but wary, like she was a risk that needed monitoring. She tried smiling at them, tried making conversation, but they answered in monosyllables and kept their hands near their weapons. One afternoon, she walked too close to the southern gate, and a guard stepped in front of her. "Can't go that way, ma'am." "Why not?" "Orders." "Whose orders?" "The Alpha's." Miranda took a breath. "I just want to walk outside." "You can walk in the courtyard." "I've walked in the courtyard every day for 3 weeks. I want to see something else." The guard's expression didn't shift. "Can't let you pass the gate, ma'am." "Sorry." She wasn't sorry, and Miranda wasn't allowed. She went back to her chamber and didn't leave it for 2 days. At night, the loneliness got worse. The keep settled into silence, and Miranda lay in that enormous bed feeling like she was floating in a void. She tried not to think about her old life, her friends, her pack, the small house she'd shared with her father. She tried not to think about what she'd given up. She failed. Sometimes she cried. Quiet, furious tears that she wiped away before anyone could see. Other times she just stared at the ceiling, tracing the cracks in the plaster and wondering how long a person could live like this before they stopped feeling like a person at all. 1 month in, she stopped counting days. 2 months in, she stopped hoping things would change. 3 months in, the storm came. What? It started as a distant rumble in the afternoon, thunder rolling down from the mountains. By evening, the wind had picked up, rattling shutters and sending leaves skittering across the courtyard. By nightfall, it was a full gale. Miranda sat by her window, watching lightning split the sky. The rain came in horizontal sheets, battering the glass. She'd always liked storms. They felt honest in a way that nothing else did, loud and violent and unapologetic. She was so focused on the storm that she didn't hear the door open. "Miranda!" She spun around. Kyle stood in the doorway, soaked to the bone. His hair was plastered to his face, his shirt clinging to his chest, and he looked like he'd been dragged through a river. Mud streaked his arms. Blood, she thought it was blood, darkened his shoulder. "What happened?" she asked, standing. He stepped inside and shut the door. Water pooled at his feet. "Mudslide. The patrol route collapsed." "Are you hurt?" "No." "Your shoulder." "It's not mine." His voice was flat, exhausted. "We lost 2 men, Marcus and Joran." Miranda didn't know those names, but she felt the weight of them anyway. "I'm sorry." Cale shrugged, but his jaw was tight. "It happens." "Does it?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something raw behind his eyes. Grief, maybe, or guilt. "Out here?" "Yeah, it does." Thunder cracked overhead. The lights flickered. "Why are you here?" Miranda asked quietly. Cale ran a hand through his wet hair. "I don't know." The honesty of it caught her off guard. She waited, but he didn't elaborate. Just stood there dripping on her floor, looking lost in a way she'd never seen him look before. "You should change," she said finally. "You'll freeze." "I'm fine." "You're soaked." "I said I'm fine." Miranda crossed her arms. "And I said you'll freeze. Don't be stubborn." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "That's rich coming from you." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You've been holed up in this room for weeks. Margot says you barely eat. Lena says you don't talk. Everyone's worried you're going to do something drastic." Miranda laughed, sharp and bitter. "Everyone's worried? Or everyone just doesn't want me to make a scene?" "Both, probably." She shook her head. "I'm not going to do anything drastic. I'm just existing. Isn't that what you want?" Cale's expression darkened. "What I want. You made it pretty clear. I'm here because of the treaty. I'm a political solution. I should stay quiet and out of the way." "I never said that." "You didn't have to." They stared at each other. The storm hammered against the windows. Lightning flashed, throwing harsh shadows across Kale's face. "I've been a bastard," he said finally. "Yes. I didn't want this marriage." "Neither did I. But you're here anyway." His voice dropped. "And I don't know what to do with that." Miranda felt something shift in her chest. Not hope, exactly, but something close. "You could try talking to me." "I'm talking to you now." "You know what I mean." Cale stepped closer. He smelled like rain and earth and something sharper, sweat, adrenaline, exhaustion. "You want honesty?" "I want something real." "Fine. Honest truth? I didn't want you here because having you here means I failed. It means I couldn't end the war on my own. It means I had to bargain with your father, had to take his daughter like some kind of prize, and every time I see you I'm reminded that I'm not strong enough to protect my pack without compromising someone else's life." The words hit her like a punch. Miranda's breath caught. "That's not—" "It is." Kyle's voice was rough. "You didn't ask for this. Neither did I. But here we are, stuck in a mess neither of us wanted, and I don't know how to fix it." "Maybe you can't fix it." "Then what's the point?" Miranda took a step toward him. "Maybe the point isn't fixing it. Maybe it's just living with it. Cale looked at her, and something in his eyes shifted. The distance that had been there since the wedding, the careful, deliberate coldness, cracked. "I think about you," he said quietly, "more than I should." Her heart did something stupid. "Cale—" He closed the distance between them in 2 strides and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't slow or careful or sweet. It was desperate and messy, like he'd been holding it back for months and couldn't anymore. His hands found her waist, pulling her against him, cold and wet and solid. And Miranda, who had spent 3 months telling herself she didn't care, didn't want, didn't need, kissed him back just as hard. They stumbled toward the bed, clumsy and urgent. His shirt was soaked. She pulled it off. Her dress had too many buttons. He gave up and just tore it. They fell onto the mattress in a tangle of limbs, breathing hard, and for the first time since she'd arrived at Frostfang Keep, Miranda felt alive. It was rough. It was imperfect. His hands were freezing, and hers were shaking, and they didn't quite know how to fit together. But it was real. It was human. And when it was over, they lay tangled in the sheets, breathing hard, the storm still raging outside. Kael's arm was draped across her stomach. His face was buried in her hair. "This doesn't fix anything," Miranda said quietly. "I know." "You're still going to ignore me tomorrow, aren't you?" He was quiet for a long time, long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then softly, "Probably." She should have been angry, should have pushed him away, told him to leave. But exhaustion pulled at her, warm and heavy, and for once she didn't have the energy to fight. So she closed her eyes and let herself have this. One night, where she wasn't alone. When she woke in the morning, he was gone. The days after were strange. Cale didn't come to her chamber again. Didn't speak to her at meals, though she noticed he'd started taking meals in the main hall instead of his study, which meant she at least saw him now. Didn't acknowledge that anything had changed, but things had changed, small things, subtle things. Lena brought her better food, fresh bread, hot stew, fruit that wasn't bruised. When Miranda asked about it, Lena just shrugged and said, "Orders from the Alpha." A guard nodded to her in the hallway. Another held a door open. Margot asked if her chamber was warm enough, if the linens needed changing. It wasn't much, but it was something. And then Miranda's body started betraying her. It began with nausea. She'd wake up feeling like the world was tilting, her stomach churning. She thought it was just stress or maybe bad food. But it kept happening. Every morning, like clockwork. Then came the exhaustion. No matter how much she slept, she felt drained. Her body felt heavy, slow, like she was moving through water. And then her cycle didn't come. At first she told herself it was late. Stress could do that. But when the second month passed with nothing, the truth settled over her like a stone. She was pregnant. Miranda sat on the edge of her bed, hands pressed to her still flat stomach, and felt the world tilt in a different way. A child. Cale's child. Growing inside her, small and impossible and terrifying. She'd always wanted children. Someday. When she was ready. When she had a home and a partner and a life that made sense. This was none of those things. But as she sat there, feeling the weight of it, something else crept in. Hope. Fragile and dangerous, but there. Maybe this would change things. Maybe a baby, an heir, would make her matter. Would make them a family instead of a contract. She wanted to tell Cale. Needed to. But the thought of walking up to him, of saying the words out loud, made her throat close up. What if he didn't care? What if he saw it as just another complication? She rehearsed it in her head. Practiced the words. Imagined his reaction. And then, before she could work up the nerve, she heard voices. It was late afternoon. Miranda had been walking toward Cale's study, her heart pounding, hands clammy. She'd decided to just do it. Walk in, tell him, deal with whatever came next. But as she approached, she heard voices inside. The door was cracked open just enough to let sound through. The marriage was a mistake, Cale's voice. Flat. Matter of fact. Miranda stopped. It served its purpose, another voice replied. Gareth, Cale's second-in-command. She recognized his growl. The treaty's holding. That's all that matters. She's still here, though. So, keep her comfortable, keep her quiet. She's not a problem as long as she stays out of the way. Cale sighed. She's not a problem at all. That's the point. She's just nothing. A political solution that worked, and now I'm stuck with her. Miranda's hand went to her stomach. She felt cold. Could be worse, Gareth said. At least she doesn't make demands. Some of the pack were worried she'd try to throw her weight around, start changing things. She doesn't have any weight to throw. Kale's voice was distant, distracted. I barely remember she exists half the time. Gareth laughed. Efficient, then. The perfect Luna, seen when needed, invisible the rest of the time. Something like that. Miranda stepped back from the door. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was even. She felt calm in a way that should have scared her, a cold clarity that cut through everything. She turned and walked back to her chamber. Not quickly, not frantically. Just walked, one foot in front of the other, while her mind worked through the problem like a puzzle. She'd been wrong. The baby wouldn't change anything. To Kyle, she was nothing. A checkbox on a treaty. A body that existed in his fortress but didn't matter beyond that. And if she stayed, her child would grow up the same way. A prop. A symbol. Something to parade out when needed and ignore the rest of the time. No. Miranda reached her chamber and closed the door. She stood in the middle of the room, hands on her stomach, and made a decision. She would leave. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Tonight. She would disappear into the frontier, into the wild lands beyond the keep's borders, and she would survive. She would raise this child alone, away from politics and treaties and men who saw people as pieces on a board. It was a terrible plan. It was dangerous and foolish and probably suicidal. But it was hers. What? Miranda packed methodically. She took clothes, practical things, warm layers. She took food from the kitchen, slipping down during dinner when the servants were busy. Dried meat, hard cheese, bread that would last. She found a knife, small but sharp, and tucked it into her bag. She didn't take jewelry, didn't take anything valuable or identifiable. If someone found her things, she wanted them to think she'd just walked away with nothing. She waited until nightfall, until the keep settled into its rhythms, guards changing shifts, servants retiring. She knew the gaps in the patrols. She'd watched them for 3 months, had nothing else to do but memorize the patterns. At midnight, she slipped out of her chamber. The hallways were dark. Her footsteps whispered on stone. She moved slowly, carefully, keeping to the shadows. Her heart pounded, but her hands didn't shake. She made it to the eastern door, a small servant's entrance that led to the storage buildings. The lock was simple. She picked it with a hairpin, something she'd learned as a teenager sneaking out to meet friends. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. Miranda stepped out into the night and didn't look back. The frontier stretched before her, dark and endless. Mountains loomed in the distance. Trees swayed in the wind. The ground was hard beneath her feet, frost already forming. She adjusted the pack on her shoulders, pulled her cloak tighter, and started walking. Somewhere behind her, Frostfang Keep stood silent and stone. Somewhere inside, Kyle slept, unaware that his unwanted wife had just vanished into the killing cold. Miranda Hale didn't care. She had a child to protect, and she would do it alone if she had to. The wilderness swallowed her, and she disappeared. The cold hit her like a fist. Miranda had thought she understood winter. She'd grown up in the northern territories, had seen snow that buried houses and ice that turned roads into glass. But this was different. This was the frontier in its rawest form. Wind that cut through every layer she wore, cold that made her lungs ache with each breath, darkness so complete it felt like the world had been erased. She walked for hours. Maybe longer. Time stopped meaning anything when every step looked identical to the last. Trees became shadows, shadows became trees. Her feet moved because stopping meant freezing, and freezing meant dying. The pack on her shoulders felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Her fingers had gone numb inside her gloves. She couldn't feel her nose anymore, couldn't tell if the wetness on her cheeks was tears or just her face protesting the temperature. But she kept walking, because behind her was Frostfang Keep, where she was nothing. And ahead, somewhere in all that hostile darkness, was a chance to be something, even if that something was just a woman trying not to die. Dawn came slowly, gray light bleeding into black. Miranda stopped at the edge of a frozen stream and looked back. The keep was gone, swallowed by distance and trees. She was alone in a way she'd never been alone before. Her hands shook as she pulled out the dried meat. She forced herself to eat slowly, methodically, even though her body screamed for more. Food wouldn't last forever. She had to be smart. The baby. She had to think about the baby. Her hand went to her stomach, still flat, still unchanged, but she knew. Something was growing there. Someone. And that someone needed her to survive. Miranda finished the meat, drank from the stream even though the water made her teeth ache, and started walking again. By the third day, she'd developed a rhythm. Walk until exhaustion made her stumble. Find shelter. A fallen log. A hollow in the rocks. Anything that blocked the wind. Sleep in short, fitful bursts. Wake up. Do it again. She found berries that hadn't frozen yet. Bitter, but edible. She caught a rabbit in a snare she'd made from twine and a bent branch, something her brother had taught her before he died. The meat was tough, and she had no fire to cook it properly. But she ate it anyway, chewing until her jaw hurt. The nausea got worse. Morning sickness, she assumed, though it hit her at all hours. She'd stop mid-step, doubled over, dry heaving until her ribs ached. Nothing came up. There wasn't enough in her stomach, but her body didn't seem to care. Still, she walked. She followed game trails when she could find them, stayed near water sources, avoided open spaces where the wind was worst. She was operating on instinct now, on some buried survival mechanism she hadn't known she possessed. At night, curled up in whatever shelter she'd found, she let herself think about Kyle, about whether he'd noticed she was gone yet. Whether he cared. Probably not. The thought should have hurt. Instead, it just made her angry, which was good. Anger kept her warm. On the fifth day, she heard voices. Miranda froze, crouched behind a boulder, heart hammering. The voices were distant, carried on the wind, but definitely human. Male. Multiple speakers. Hunters, maybe. Or scouts. Or people looking for her. She waited until the voices faded, then circled wide, putting as much distance between herself and them as possible. Her hands were shaking again, but not from cold this time. If Kyle had sent people after her, it meant he knew. It meant someone had discovered her absence and raised an alarm. The thought made her stomach clench. She couldn't go back. She wouldn't. Miranda adjusted her pack and kept moving, faster now, less careful. She needed to get deeper into the wilderness, somewhere they wouldn't think to look. The terrain got rougher, rocky slopes that made her ankles scream, dense undergrowth that tore at her clothes. She pushed through it, ignoring the scratches on her hands, the ache in her legs. By nightfall, she'd put miles between herself and those voices. She found a cave, small, shallow, but dry, and collapsed inside. Her body was done. Finished. She felt like she'd been beaten with hammers, but she'd made it another day. She pulled out the last of the bread, now stale and hard, and forced herself to eat half. The other half went back in the pack. Tomorrow's breakfast. As she lay there, staring at the cave ceiling, Miranda felt the baby, or imagined she did. A small flutter, like a question being asked. "We're okay," she whispered. "We're going to be okay." She wasn't sure who she was trying to convince. The cave became her base for 3 days. She was too exhausted to keep moving, and the weather had turned vicious. Sleet that fell in icy needles. Wind that howled through the trees like something alive and angry. She ventured out only to find food and water. The stream nearby had started to freeze over. She had to break through the ice with a rock to get to the liquid underneath. Her fingers went blue doing it, and it took an hour of rubbing them before feeling returned. The food situation was getting desperate. She'd eaten the last of her supplies. The rabbit snare hadn't caught anything in 2 days. She found mushrooms that she thought might be edible, but wasn't sure. And the risk of poisoning herself, poisoning the baby, was too high. On the third day in the cave, she woke up so weak she couldn't stand immediately. Her vision swam. Her hands trembled. This was it. The breaking point. She couldn't keep going like this. Miranda forced herself upright, leaning against the cave wall for support. She needed protein, needed real food. The berries and occasional roots weren't enough. She grabbed the knife and went hunting. The woods were silent, blanketed in fresh snow. Miranda moved carefully, looking for tracks. She found deer prints, too big, too fast for her to catch. Squirrel marks in a tree, maybe, but she'd need better aim than she had. Then she saw it. A grouse, fat and stupid, pecking at something on the ground. Miranda's breath caught. She moved slowly, so slowly, circling to get a better angle. The bird didn't notice. She pulled the knife, judged the distance. She'd never thrown a knife at anything living before. Her arm went back. Her whole body tensed. She threw. The knife tumbled through the air and hit the tree 6 inches to the left of the bird. The grouse exploded into flight, vanishing into the canopy. Miranda stood there, staring at her knife buried in the bark, and felt something crack inside her. She walked over, yanked the knife out, and screamed. It wasn't a word, just raw sound, fury and frustration and fear pouring out of her in a wave. She screamed until her throat burned, until her voice cracked, until there was nothing left. Then she sat down in the snow and cried. Not quiet tears this time. Ugly, heaving sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for the baby growing inside her. She cried for the life she'd left behind. She cried for her own stupidity and thinking she could do this alone. When she finally stopped, the woods were still silent. The snow kept falling. Nothing had changed except that she felt hollowed out, empty. Miranda wiped her face, stood up, and kept looking. An hour later, she found another rabbit. This time, the snare worked. She stayed in the cave for 2 more days, rationing the rabbit meat, trying to regain her strength. The sleet stopped, the wind calmed, and on the 6th day she heard the voices again, closer this time. Spread out. She can't have gone far. It's been over a week. She could be dead already. The alpha wants her found. Dead or alive, we bring her back. Miranda's blood went cold. She gathered her things as quietly as possible, stuffed everything into the pack. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely tie the straps. The voices were getting closer. Check that cave. She didn't wait to hear more. Miranda slipped out the back of the cave. Barely a gap in the rocks, but she squeezed through and ran. Not smart running, not careful running, just pure animal panic, crashing through undergrowth and snow, her pack bouncing against her back. There, movement! Footsteps behind her, shouting. Miranda ran harder. Her lungs screamed, her legs felt like they were tearing apart. But she ran. She burst through a stand of trees and found herself at the edge of a ravine. The drop was steep, rocky, maybe 30 feet down to a frozen stream. The footsteps were right behind her. Miranda looked down, looked back, and made a choice. She jumped. The world blurred. She hit the slope wrong, tumbled, rocks and ice and pain all jumbling together. Something cracked. Her ribs, maybe, or her wrist. She couldn't tell. She just rolled and slid and finally crashed into the frozen stream at the bottom. For a moment she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, just lay there gasping like a fish. Can you see her? Too far down. The ravine's too steep. Should we go around? A pause, then. No. If she survived that fall, she's too broken to keep running. We'll report her last position. Let the alpha decide. The voices faded. Miranda lay in the snow, staring at the gray sky, and took inventory. Her wrist was definitely sprained, maybe broken. Her ribs hurt with every breath. Her ankle was swelling inside her boot. But she was alive. And the baby, she pressed her hand to her stomach, the baby was still there, still fighting. She started laughing. Quiet, half-hysterical giggles that made her ribs scream in protest. She'd just jumped off a cliff to escape her own husband's men, and somehow she was still breathing. It took her 20 minutes to stand up, longer to start moving, but she did. Because stopping meant they'd find her, and she'd thrown herself off a cliff to avoid that. Miranda limped deeper into the ravine, following the frozen stream, leaving Khalil's searchers behind. The next week was a blur of pain and movement. Her wrist made everything harder. She couldn't grip properly, couldn't tie knots, couldn't even open her pack without fumbling. Her ribs forced her to breathe shallow, which meant she got winded faster. But she adapted. She learned to do things one-handed, learned to ignore pain that would have stopped her before, learned that the human body could keep going long past the point where it should quit. The nausea got worse. She threw up what little food she managed to find, then forced herself to eat again because the baby needed it. Her body was eating itself. She could feel the weight dropping off, could see her hands getting thinner. But the baby stayed. A small, stubborn presence that refused to let go. Miranda built a shelter out of branches and pine boughs, waterproofed it with mud and dead leaves. It wasn't warm, but it blocked the wind. She learned to make fire without matches, using friction and dried moss and patience she didn't know she had. She caught fish from the stream using a spear she'd carved from a branch. They were small, bony, but they were protein. She ate them raw when she couldn't get a fire going, cooked when she could. At night, she planned. She couldn't keep running forever. Winter was settling in hard now, and she was already pushing her limits. She needed a real shelter, needed a way to store food, needed to think past tomorrow. There were settlements out here, small frontier towns, trappers' cabins, places where people lived on the edges of pack territory. If she could reach one of them, maybe she could disappear. Trade work for food and shelter. Raise the baby somewhere Kyle would never think to look. It was a long shot, but it was better than dying in the woods. Miranda spent a week preparing. She stockpiled fish, smoking them over her fire until they were dry enough to keep. She made a better pack from animal hides she'd scraped and dried. She fashioned a walking stick that helped take weight off her bad ankle. And then, one cold morning when the sky was clear and sharp, she set out. Iamatsi. The settlement was 3 days' walk, according to her best guess from landmarks she'd studied before leaving Frostfang Keep. 3 days if the weather held and she didn't get lost. It took 5. The terrain was brutal, steep hills that made her ankles scream, frozen streams she had to ford, snowdrifts that swallowed her up to the waist. Twice, she had to backtrack when she hit dead ends. Once, she got turned around completely and spent half a day walking in the wrong direction. But on the 5th day, she saw smoke. Miranda stopped at the top of a ridge and stared. Below, nestled in a valley, was a cluster of buildings. Maybe 20 structures, wood and stone, smoke rising from chimneys. People moved between them, distant figures, but unmistakably human. She'd made it. Her legs gave out. She sat down hard in the snow, laughing and crying at the same time. She'd actually made it. Then the practical part of her brain kicked in. She couldn't just walk into town looking like this, half-starved, wild-haired, wearing clothes that were more patches than fabric. She needed a story, an identity. She couldn't be Miranda Hale, runaway Luna. That was a death sentence. So who could she be? She thought about it as she made her way down the ridge. By the time she reached the edge of the settlement, she had it figured out. Her name was Mira. Just Mira. She was a widow from a small pack down south, traveling to join her sister in the north. She'd gotten separated from her caravan during a storm and had been surviving on her own ever since. Simple, believable, nothing that would raise questions. Miranda, Mira, walked into the settlement with her head down and her story ready. The first person she saw was a woman hauling water from a well. The woman looked up, took in Miranda's appearance, and her eyes went wide. "Sweet mercy, girl, what happened to you?" Miranda's voice came out rough from disuse. "Got lost, been walking for days, Toots." The woman set down her buckets. "You're half dead. Come on, let's get you inside." "I don't want to be trouble." "Nonsense. Come." The woman led her to a small house at the edge of town. Inside it was warm, blessedly, impossibly warm. Miranda felt tears prick her eyes just from the heat. The woman sat her down by the fire. "I'm Helen. What's your name?" "Mira." "Where are you from, Mira?" Miranda launched into her story. Helen listened, nodding occasionally, her expression sympathetic. When Miranda finished, Helen stood up. "You'll stay here tonight, get some proper food in you, some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out what's next." "I can work," Miranda said quickly. "I don't want charity. I can cook, clean, whatever you need. We'll talk about that tomorrow. For now, you need to recover." Helen brought her soup, thick, hot, full of vegetables and meat. Miranda ate slowly, forcing herself not to gulp it down, even though every cell in her body was screaming for more. That night she slept in a real bed for the first time in weeks. The mattress felt like heaven. The blankets were warm and clean, and for the first time since leaving Frostfang Keep, Miranda felt safe. She stayed with Helen for 3 days, helping with chores as her strength returned. The settlement was small, mostly trappers and their families, people who preferred the frontier to pack politics. They were friendly but not intrusive, accepting her story without pushing for details. On the 4th day, Helen introduced her to Marcus, a grizzled man who ran the trading post. "Mira here's looking for work," Helen said. Marcus looked Miranda up and down. You know how to keep books? Yes. Can you read? And write? He grunted. Most folks out here can't. I need someone to track inventory, handle orders. Pays not much, but it comes with a room above the shop. Miranda could have kissed him. I'll take it. Start tomorrow. Just like that, she had a job, a place to live, a new identity. Mira the widow worked in the trading post, kept to herself, and slowly started to build a life. The first month was hard. Her body was still recovering, and the pregnancy symptoms were getting worse. She was showing now, just a small bump, but noticeable. She told Helen she was expecting, that her husband had died before knowing about the baby. Helen's eyes had filled with tears. Oh, honey, you've been through too much. I'm managing. You're stronger than you look. Miranda wasn't sure about that. But she was surviving, and that was enough. The settlement accepted her. She became part of the rhythm, working at the trading post, eating meals with Helen, attending the occasional community gathering. People asked questions sometimes, but she'd gotten good at deflecting. Where'd you say you were from again? Down south, small pack. You wouldn't know it. What was your husband's name? Thomas. The first name that came to mind. How'd he die? Hunting accident, said quickly, with just enough pain in her voice that people didn't push. It worked. They believed her. Or if they didn't, they were polite enough not to say so. But there was one person who watched her more carefully than the others. His name was Ethan. He was one of the trappers, maybe 30, with sandy hair and scars on his hands from years of working traps. He came into the trading post regularly, always polite, always friendly, too friendly. One afternoon he lingered after his purchase. You settling in okay, Mira? Fine, thank you. If you need anything, I'm fine, he smiled. You say that a lot. Miranda looked up from the ledger. Because it's true. Is it? Something in his tone made her uneasy. What are you asking? Ethan leaned against the counter. Just seems odd. A woman traveling alone, getting lost, ending up here right as winter hits. Convenient timing. Her heart picked up speed. I don't follow. And you're educated, well-spoken. Not like most frontier folks. My father valued learning. Ethan studied her. You ever been to Frostfang Keep? The world tilted. Miranda kept her face neutral. No. Why? Just heard some interesting news. Alpha Draven's wife disappeared a few weeks back. Vanished right out of the fortress. That's unfortunate. They're looking for her. Got search parties out across the whole territory. Miranda's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the counter. I hope they find her. Ethan's eyes didn't leave her face. Yeah, me too. He left without another word. Miranda stood there, frozen, her mind racing. He knew, or suspected. Either way, she was compromised. That night she packed her bag again. Helen found her as she was tying the straps. Mira, what are you doing? I have to leave. What? Why? I just do. Did something happen? Did someone... It's not safe for me here. Helen's face crumpled. Where will you go? Miranda didn't have an answer. She just knew she couldn't stay. Helen grabbed her hands. Listen to me. You're pregnant. You're still recovering. If you go back out there now, you'll die. If I stay, something worse will happen. How do you know? I just do. They stared at each other. Finally, Helen sighed. At least wait until morning. Let me pack you proper supplies. Miranda wanted to argue, but Helen was right. Leaving now, unprepared, would be suicide. Okay, morning. She didn't sleep that night. Just sat by the window watching the street, waiting for Kael's men to come crashing through the door. They didn't. But when dawn broke, Ethan was standing outside the trading post, waiting. Miranda watched Ethan through the window, her pulse hammering in her throat. He stood with his arms crossed, breath misting in the early morning cold, eyes fixed on the trading post door. Not moving, just waiting. Helen came up beside her. That's Ethan. I know. He's a good man, bit rough around the edges, but he knows who I am. Helen went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was careful. And who are you, Mira? Miranda turned to look at her. This woman who'd taken her in, fed her, given her a place to sleep. She deserved better than lies. Someone who can't stay here anymore.
Is he going to hurt you? Not him, but the people who'll come after him. Tell them where I am. Miranda grabbed her pack. I'm leaving through the back. In your condition, you're barely... I don't have a choice.
Helen's jaw tightened. Then she moved to the cupboard and started pulling things down. Dried meat, hard cheese, a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth. Then you're taking proper supplies. And this. She pressed a small leather pouch into Miranda's hand. It jingled with coins. I can't. Yes, you can. You worked for it. Helen's eyes were wet. There's a trapper's cabin about 15 miles northeast. Old man who used to live there died last spring. It's empty now. Not much, but it'll keep you out of the weather. Miranda's throat closed up. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just survive. They embraced quickly, fiercely. Then Miranda slipped out the back door into the alley. The cold hit her immediately. She pulled her cloak tighter and started moving, staying close to the buildings, working her way to the edge of the settlement. Her ankles still ached from the ravine fall, but she ignored it. Pain was just information. It couldn't stop her. She made it to the tree line and risked a look back. Ethan was gone from his post. Miranda's stomach dropped. She turned and ran. Heat. The forest swallowed her within minutes. Miranda pushed through underbrush, her pack bouncing against her back, branches catching at her clothes. She could hear shouts behind her, distant, but getting closer. She went this way. Spread out. They'd mobilized fast, too fast, which meant Ethan hadn't been working alone. Miranda changed direction, angling northeast like Helen had said. 15 miles. She could make 15 miles. She'd walked farther than that already, but not while pregnant, not while being hunted. Her breath came in ragged gasps. The baby pressed against her lungs, making everything harder. She had to slow down, had to pace herself, but the voices behind her wouldn't let her. She splashed through a half-frozen stream, the water soaking her boots. Her feet went numb almost immediately, but she kept going. Water would hide her scent, make tracking harder. The voices faded. Miranda kept running for another hour, putting as much distance as possible between herself and the settlement. When she finally stopped, her legs were shaking and her vision was spotty. She leaned against a tree, gasping, hand pressed to her stomach. Still there? She whispered. A flutter, small but definite. Good. Stay with me. She found the cabin 3 days later, half dead from exhaustion and cold. It sat in a small clearing, weathered wood and a sagging roof, but the walls were solid and the door still hung on its hinges. Miranda pushed inside and nearly cried with relief. It was one room. A fireplace in the corner, a wooden frame that might have been a bed, a table with 2 legs missing. But it was shelter, real shelter. She dropped her pack and immediately set to work. First priority, fire. The cabin had a small stack of wood left behind, dry enough to burn. She got a fire going using the friction method she'd learned, and the warmth that spread through the room felt like salvation. Second priority, securing the space. She checked the walls for gaps, stuffed them with moss and strips of cloth. She found a piece of canvas in the corner and used it to patch a hole in the roof. Third priority, water. There was a stream about 50 yards away. She'd have to boil it, but it was close enough to manage. By nightfall, the cabin was livable. Barely. But compared to sleeping in the wilderness, it was paradise. Miranda heated some of the dried meat Helen had given her, ate it slowly, and allowed herself to think about what came next. She couldn't keep running forever. Winter was settling in hard, and soon the snow would make travel impossible. She needed to stay here, ride out the season, and hope Kael's people gave up looking. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was what she had. The first week in this cabin was brutal. Miranda worked from dawn until dark, preparing for winter. She gathered firewood until her arms ached, stacking it against the cabin wall. She set snares for rabbits and managed to catch 2. She foraged for anything edible, roots, bark, frozen berries that clung to withered bushes. The baby grew. Her stomach pushed out noticeably now, a hard swell that made everything awkward. Bending down, carrying water. Even sleeping became complicated. But the baby was alive, active even. It moved constantly now, little kicks and rolls that reminded Miranda she wasn't alone. You're a fighter, she told her stomach one night. Just like your mother. She didn't think about Kael, couldn't afford to. Thinking about him meant remembering that night, the storm, the way he'd looked at her like she mattered.
and then remembering the words she'd overheard, the casual dismissal, the way he'd erased her existence. Better to focus on survival. On the 8th day, snow started falling in earnest, fat flakes that turned the world white within hours. Miranda watched from the cabin doorway, her heart sinking. This was it. She was locked in now, couldn't leave even if she wanted to. She closed the door and fed the fire.
The isolation was harder than the physical work. Miranda had always been around people, family, pack members, servants at Frostfang Keep. Even when she'd been alone in her chamber, she'd known there were people nearby. Here, there was nothing, just trees and snow and silence. She talked to the baby to keep from going crazy.
"Your grandmother would have liked you," she said one afternoon while mending her torn cloak.
She was tough, didn't take nonsense from anyone. She died before you could meet her, but she would have loved you. The baby kicked. "Your father—" Miranda stopped, the needle pausing mid-stitch. "Your father is complicated. He's strong and smart and completely broken in ways he doesn't even recognize. And he doesn't want us." Another kick, harder this time.
"I know. I'm sorry. You deserve better than this. You deserve a home and safety and—" Her voice cracked. "You deserve so much more than I can give you." But she'd give everything she had. That much she knew.
3 weeks into her stay at the cabin, Miranda woke to the sound of wolves. Not the howling she'd grown used to, distant, mournful. This was closer. Aggressive barking and snarling right outside the cabin. She sat up, heart pounding. The fire had burned down to embers. The room was dark except for the faint glow from the fireplace. The wolves circled the cabin. She could hear them prowling, sniffing at the walls. There had to be at least 4 or 5 of them. Miranda grabbed the knife and moved to the door, making sure it was secured. The latch was flimsy, just a piece of metal that slid into a bracket. It wouldn't hold if they really pushed. A wolf threw itself against the door. The wood shuddered. Miranda stumbled back, hand going to her stomach. "No, no, no!" Another impact. The door held, but barely. She looked around frantically. The window, small, high up, but if they broke through the door, she could maybe climb out, run.
Where? In the dark? In the snow? Pregnant? Another impact. This time the latch bent. Miranda made a decision. She grabbed a burning stick from the fire and threw the door open. The wolves scattered back, eyes gleaming in the firelight. She waved the torch at them, shouting, "Get back! Go!" The largest one, a massive gray beast with scarred flanks, growled low. It didn't retreat. Miranda's hand shook, but she held the torch steady. "I said get back!" The wolf lunged. She swung the torch. Fire caught its muzzle and it yelped, leaping away. The pack scattered, melting into the darkness. Miranda stood in the doorway, torch held high, breathing hard. She waited 5 minutes. 10. No movement. Finally, she stepped back inside and barred the door with the table, wedging it under the latch. Then she sat down on the floor and shook. Teak. The wolf attack changed things. Miranda couldn't relax anymore. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow looked like a threat. She slept with the knife in her hand and the fire burning high, feeding it constantly, even though it ate through her wood supply. She started rationing more carefully. The dried meat was half gone. The cheese was finished. She had maybe 2 weeks of food left if she stretched it. The baby needed more than that. Miranda forced herself to go out hunting, even though it terrified her. She checked her snares every day, reset them when they came up empty. She tried fishing in the stream, breaking through the ice with a rock, and dangling a line made from unraveled thread. It took 6 tries before she caught anything. A small trout, barely worth the effort, but she cooked it and ate every bit, bones and all. That night, sitting by the fire with her hands on her stomach, Miranda admitted the truth she'd been avoiding. She wasn't going to make it through winter. The food would run out, the cold would get worse, and eventually something would happen. Illness, injury, another animal attack, and she'd be too weak to fight it. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the baby. "I thought I could do this. I really did." The baby kicked, hard enough to make her gasp. "Yeah, I know. You're not giving up." Miranda wiped her eyes. "Okay. Me neither." The next morning, she made a choice. She couldn't stay here waiting to die. She had to move, had to find somewhere with more resources.
There was a larger settlement about 30 miles west. She'd seen it marked on a map in the trading post. If she could make it there, she might be able to blend in, find work, survive. It was risky. The journey would be brutal. But staying was certain death. Miranda packed what little she had left. Food, water skin, the knife. Helen's coins? She wrapped herself in every layer she owned and stepped out into the frozen morning. The world was white and silent. Snow stretched in every direction, broken only by tree trunks and the occasional rock outcropping. Miranda oriented herself west and started walking. She made it 2 miles before the pain started. At first it was just a cramp. Uncomfortable, but manageable. She kept walking, assuming it would pass. It didn't. The cramps got worse, sharper, regular. Miranda stopped, leaning against a tree, breathing through the pain. No, not now. It was too early. She was barely 6 months along. The baby couldn't... Another cramp, this one hard enough to double her over. She pressed her hand to her stomach.
No, you have to stay in there. It's not time yet. The baby kicked weakly. Miranda forced herself to keep moving. Maybe it was just false labor. Maybe it would stop if she stayed calm, kept her breathing steady. Half a mile later, she felt wetness between her legs. She stopped, looked down, and saw red in the snow. No, her legs gave out. She went down hard, hands pressed to her stomach, feeling the baby move inside her, still alive, still fighting, but something was wrong. Miranda tried to stand, couldn't. The pain was too much. She was going to lose the baby, out here, alone, in the snow. Please, she gasped. Please, not like this. The forest didn't answer. She lay there, curled around her stomach, feeling blood seep into the snow, and screamed. She didn't know how long she lay there. Minutes, hours. Time stopped meaning anything. The bleeding slowed. The contractions eased. The baby kept moving, weak flutters, but present. Miranda pushed herself upright, shaking violently. She couldn't stay here. If she stayed, she'd freeze. She had to get back to the cabin. The walk back took forever. Each step was agony. She fell twice, got up twice, kept moving because stopping meant dying. When she finally saw the cabin through the trees, she almost sobbed with relief. She made it inside, collapsed by the fire, and passed out. When she woke, it was dark. The fire had gone out. The cabin was freezing. Miranda forced herself to move. She got the fire going again, hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the flint. Once the flames caught, she huddled close, trying to warm herself. She checked her body. The bleeding had mostly stopped. The cramps were gone. The baby was still moving. We made it, she whispered. We're okay. But she wasn't okay. Her body was giving out. She'd pushed too hard, asked too much of herself. She needed rest, real rest, and food, and help. She had none of those things. Miranda closed her eyes and tried to think. There had to be a way forward. There had to be. The door burst open. She scrambled back, grabbing the knife, but her body was too slow, too weak. 3 men filled the doorway. 2 she didn't recognize. The third was Ethan. Found you, he said. Miranda raised the knife. Get out. Ethan held up his hands. Easy. We're not here to hurt you. Then why are you here? Because there's a price on your head, big one. Alpha Draven's offering a fortune to whoever brings you back. One of the other men, tall, with a scar across his nose, grinned. Dead or alive? Miranda's hand tightened on the knife. I'm not going back. You don't have a choice, Ethan said. He sounded almost apologetic. Look at you. You're half dead already. Come with us. We'll get you somewhere warm, get you fed, and then hand me over to Kyle. That's the deal. I'd rather die here. The scarred man laughed. That can be arranged. Ethan shot him a look. Shut up, Reed. He turned back to Miranda. You're being stupid. You've got a baby to think about. You really want to die in this cabin out of pride? It's not pride. It's survival. How's that working out for you? Miranda looked at them. 3 grown men, healthy, armed. She looked at herself, pregnant, bleeding, barely able to stand. She couldn't win this fight, but she could make them work for it. Fine, she said, lowering the knife slightly. You're right. I can't keep doing this alone. Ethan relaxed. Good. Smart choice. But I need to rest first. Just one night. I can barely walk.
We leave now.
I'm bleeding. You drag me through the snow like this, I'll die before we reach Frostfang Keep. Then you get nothing. Ethan hesitated. Reed stepped forward. She's stalling. Maybe, but she's right. Alpha wants her alive. We show up with a corpse. We don't get paid. So what do? We camp here tonight. Leave at first light. Miranda let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Thank you.
Don't thank me yet. They took her knife, tied her hands, not tight, but enough that she couldn't run. Reed built up the fire while the third man, who hadn't spoken, went outside to secure their horses. Miranda sat in the corner, hands bound in front of her, and watched them. Ethan kept glancing at her. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Are you? Yeah, you seem like a decent person, but business is business. And I'm just business. He shrugged. To the Alpha, yeah. To me, I don't know. But the money's enough that I'm not asking questions. Reed laughed from across the room. Money's always enough. The third man came back inside. Horses are set. We should take shifts keeping watch. I'll take first, Ethan said. He settled near the door, crossbow across his lap. Miranda closed her eyes, pretending to sleep, but her mind was racing. She had until dawn, maybe less. She needed a plan. Bosom. 2 hours later, Reed was snoring by the fire. The third man, she'd heard them call him Cole, was asleep in the corner. Ethan sat by the door, alert but tired. Miranda waited another hour. Then she shifted, making a small sound of pain. Ethan looked over. You okay? Need to use the privy. He sighed. There's no privy. Then I need to go outside. You can wait until morning. I'm pregnant. I can't wait. Ethan rubbed his face. Fine, but I'm coming with you. I'd hope so. Wouldn't want me running off tied up and bleeding. He helped her stand. Her legs shook, but she managed. They went outside together, Ethan keeping a hand on her arm. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky. The cold bit at her face. Over there, she said, nodding toward the trees. They walked a few yards from the cabin. Miranda stopped. Can you give me some privacy? Not a chance. I'm tied up and barely able to stand. Where am I going to run? Ethan hesitated, then he turned his back. Make it quick. Miranda counted to 3. Then she kicked the back of his knee as hard as she could. Ethan went down with a grunt. Miranda dropped on top of him, her tied hands wrapping around his throat. He thrashed, trying to throw her off, but she had leverage and desperation. I'm sorry, she gasped. I'm so sorry. He clawed at her hands. She held on. He went limp. Miranda released him, shaking violently. She checked his pulse, still there, just unconscious. She searched his pockets, found a knife, cut her bonds. Her hands were free. She could run. Right now. Disappear into the woods before Reed and Cole woke up. But she'd never outrun horses. Not in her condition. Miranda looked at Ethan, then at the cabin, and made a choice she knew she'd regret. She dragged him away from the cabin. It took everything she had. He was twice her size and pure dead weight. But she managed to get him behind a cluster of trees, out of sight. Then she went back to the cabin. Reed was still snoring. Cole hadn't moved. Miranda picked up Ethan's crossbow from where he'd left it by the door. She'd never fired one before. But how hard could it be? She aimed at the fire, at the stack of dry wood Reed had piled next to it, and pulled the trigger. The bolt flew wild, missing completely, embedding in the wall. Reed jerked awake. What the? Miranda grabbed a burning log from the fire and threw it at the woodpile. It caught instantly. Flames exploded upward, spreading to the wall, the ceiling, filling the cabin with smoke and heat. Reed scrambled back, shouting. Cole woke up, saw the fire, and both men bolted for the door. Miranda was already outside, running. She heard them behind her, cursing, shouting, but they'd have to deal with the fire first, and by then, she made it to the horses. Untied the nearest one, a big chestnut mare, grabbed the saddle horn and tried to pull herself up. Her body screamed in protest. She couldn't do it, couldn't get her leg high enough. Footsteps behind her. Stop! Miranda grabbed the horse's mane and hauled herself up using pure adrenaline. She got one leg over, kicked hard, and the mare bolted. A crossbow bolt whistled past her head. She leaned low over the horse's neck and rode into the darkness. She rode for hours, until the horse was lathered and stumbling. Finally, she slid off in a small clearing and collapsed. The horse stood nearby, head down, sides heaving. Miranda lay in the snow, staring at the sky, and started laughing. She'd done it. She'd actually escaped. Then the pain hit. Real pain this time. Deep and sharp and unrelenting. The baby was coming. "No," she gasped. "Not yet. Not now." But her body didn't care about timing. The contractions came fast, overwhelming. Miranda dragged herself to a tree, propped herself against it, and felt her world narrow to pain and pressure and the desperate need to push. She was alone, in the middle of nowhere, about to give birth in the snow, and there was absolutely nothing she could do about it. Miranda screamed, not from fear, not from despair, from pure, white-hot pain that tore through her body like lightning. She pressed her back against the tree, legs spread, hands braced in the snow, and felt her body ripping itself apart. The baby was coming, right now, in the middle of the frozen wilderness with nothing but a half-dead horse and her own shaking hands. She couldn't do this. She wasn't ready. She didn't know how. Another contraction hit and her body made the choice for her. She bore down, pushing with everything she had, feeling something shift inside her. The horse whinnied nervously nearby. "Stay," Miranda gasped. "Just stay there." She had no idea if the horse understood. Didn't matter. She pushed again, her vision going white at the edges. Time stopped meaning anything. There was only pain and pressure and the animal need to get this thing out of her body. She pushed until her throat was raw from screaming, pushed until she tasted blood, pushed until something gave. Miranda reached down with trembling hands and felt the baby's head, wet and warm and impossibly small. "Oh my God," she sobbed. Okay, almost there." One more push, then another, and suddenly the baby slid free into her waiting hands. For a moment, Miranda just stared. A tiny thing, covered in blood and fluid, absolutely silent. Too silent. "No." She pulled the baby close, wiping its face with shaking fingers. "No, no, no. Breathe. Come on. Breathe." Nothing. Miranda turned the baby over, supported its head, and smacked its back. Once. Twice. The baby coughed, then wailed. The sound was the most beautiful thing Miranda had ever heard. She pulled the baby against her chest, tucking it inside her cloak for warmth. A girl. She had a daughter. "Hi," Miranda whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, baby. I've got you. You're okay." The baby kept crying, loud, angry screams that echoed through the forest. Miranda laughed and cried at the same time. She was sitting in the snow, bleeding and exhausted, holding a newborn against her chest, and she'd never felt anything so real in her life. Then the practical part of her brain kicked in. The umbilical cord. She needed to cut it. She fumbled for the knife she'd taken from Ethan, hands slippery with blood. She tied off the cord with a strip torn from her shirt, then cut it. The afterbirth came next. Miranda delivered it into the snow, barely aware of what she was doing. Instinct and desperation were running the show now. She needed shelter, needed warmth. The baby was already shivering against her skin. Miranda looked at the horse. "Come here, please." The mare stepped closer, curious. "Good girl." Miranda grabbed the saddle horn and used it to pull herself upright. Her legs nearly gave out. She leaned against the horse, breathing hard, holding the baby with one arm. She couldn't ride. Not like this. But maybe she could walk, use the horse for support. She started moving, one hand gripping the stirrup, the other holding her daughter. Each step was agony. Her body felt shredded, wrong. But the baby needed warmth, and she needed shelter, and stopping meant both of them would die. So she walked. She found a hollow in the rocks about half a mile from where she'd given birth. Not a cave exactly, but an overhang that blocked the wind. It would have to do. Miranda collapsed inside, arranging herself so the baby was tucked against her skin under her cloak. She tied the mare to a nearby tree and prayed the horse wouldn't bolt. Then she just focused on breathing, on staying conscious, on keeping the baby warm. The baby had stopped crying. She was making small sounds now, rooting against Miranda's chest. "I don't have anything for you yet," Miranda whispered, "but we'll figure it out, I promise." She must have passed out because the next thing she knew, pale light was filtering through the trees. Dawn. She'd made it through the night. The baby was still breathing, still warm. Miranda felt a laugh bubble up. They were alive, both of them, against every possible odd. But they couldn't stay here. She needed real shelter, food, help. She forced herself to stand. Her body screamed in protest, but she ignored it. The baby was wrapped securely against her chest now, tucked inside her cloak where her body heat could keep her warm. Miranda untied the horse and started walking again. She didn't know where she was going, just knew she needed to move, needed to find civilization before her body gave out completely. The horse followed behind her, patient and steady. Miranda leaned on its shoulder when the dizziness got too bad, used its strength to keep herself upright. The baby slept. Sometimes she'd wake and cry, and Miranda would stop to check her, make sure she was still warm, still breathing. Then they'd start moving again. Hours passed. Maybe days. Miranda lost track. She was delirious by the time she heard the voices. "Over here!" "Is that a woman?" Miranda turned toward the sound. Figures moving through the trees, men on horseback. For a moment she thought it was Ethan and his crew. She reached for the knife. Then she recognized the lead rider, Kyle. He sat on a massive black horse, scanning the forest with hard eyes. When he saw her, he went completely still. Miranda stood there, swaying, one hand on the mare, the other holding her cloak closed over the baby. Blood stained her legs, her hair was matted with dirt and sweat. She probably looked like something that had crawled out of a nightmare. Kyle dismounted and started toward her. Miranda raised the knife. "Stay back." He stopped. "Miranda." "I said stay back. You're bleeding. I know what I'm doing." "Do you?" His voice was rough. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like you're about to collapse." "Then stop looking." Behind Kyle, other riders appeared. Gareth. Two guards she vaguely recognized from Frostfang Keep. They stared at her like she was a ghost. Kale took another step. Miranda backed up, stumbled, nearly fell. The baby made a small sound. Kale froze. "What was that?" Miranda's hand tightened on her cloak. "Nothing. That wasn't nothing." He came closer, ignoring the knife. "Miranda, what?" The baby cried. Kale's face went blank with shock. He stared at Miranda's cloak, at the bundle pressed against her chest. "Is that mine? She's mine." "A baby." His voice cracked. "You had the baby. Out here. Alone. No thanks to you." Kale looked like she'd hit him. "How long?" "Hours. Maybe a day. I lost track. You gave birth alone in the wilderness." "I didn't have much choice." Gareth rode forward. "Alpha, we should—" "Shut up." Kale didn't take his eyes off Miranda. "Let me see her." "No." "Miranda, I heard you. At Frostfang Keep, I heard what you said to Gareth. That I was nothing. A political solution you barely remembered existed." Kale went very still. "You heard that. Every word. So no, you don't get to see her. You don't get to be part of this. That conversation wasn't—" He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "I was manipulated. Gareth was feeding me lies, trying to keep us apart, and I was too stupid to see it." Miranda laughed, bitter and sharp. Convenient excuse. "It's the truth. Truth is you married me to end a war, and then pretended I didn't exist. Truth is I was locked in that fortress for 3 months while you ignored me. Truth is I meant nothing to you until I disappeared." "You're right." The admission seemed to cost him. "I was a coward. I didn't want the marriage, didn't want the complication, so I pushed you away, and by the time I realized what I'd done, you were gone." Miranda's legs were shaking. She needed to sit down, needed to stop talking and just collapse, but she held her ground. "Why are you here?" "Looking for you." "Why?" "Because you're my wife." "Your unwanted wife." "Because you're carrying my child." Miranda's jaw tightened. "I was carrying your child. Now I'm protecting my daughter from a man who doesn't want her." "I do want her." Kale's voice broke. "I want both of you. I've been searching for weeks, tearing apart the frontier, terrified I'd find you dead. And now you're standing here bleeding and broken. And all I want is to help you." "I don't need your help." "Miranda, you can barely stand. I've been doing fine on my own." "Fine, you gave birth in the snow."
And we survived.
The baby cried louder, disturbed by the raised voices. Miranda automatically rocked her, making soothing sounds. Kael watched, something raw and broken in his eyes. Please, let me help. Just let me see that you're both okay, and then you can decide what happens next. Miranda wanted to say no, wanted to turn around and walk away and prove she didn't need him. But her body was giving out. She could feel it shutting down, the adrenaline that had kept her moving finally running dry. The baby needed warmth, needed food Miranda couldn't provide, needed medical attention. Fine, she said finally, but we're not going back to Frostfang Keep. Where do you want to go? Somewhere else. Anywhere else. Kael nodded. Okay, there's a safe house about 5 miles from here. Small, private. We can go there. Miranda didn't trust him, but she was out of options. Lead the way. The safe house turns out to be a hunting lodge, well-maintained and stocked with supplies. Kael carried Miranda inside. She'd tried to walk and immediately collapsed, and laid her on a bed near the fireplace. Gareth started to follow them in. Kael stopped him at the door. Wait outside. Alpha, I need to... I said wait outside, all of you. The guards retreated. Gareth looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Kael's expression made him back down. Kael closed the door and turned to Miranda. Let me see her. Miranda's arms tightened around the baby, but Kael's eyes were desperate, pleading, and she was too tired to fight. She opened her cloak. The baby was tiny, red-faced, with a shock of dark hair. She'd stopped crying and was just looking around with unfocused eyes. Kael moved closer, staring like he'd never seen a baby before. She's perfect. She's cold and hungry and needs actual care. There's a midwife in the nearest settlement. I'll send someone. No one else knows about her. Kael looked at her. Miranda, you need help. I need you to promise that if I let people help us, you won't try to take her from me. I would never... Promise. I promise. He said it with such intensity that Miranda almost believed him. I swear on my life I will never take her from you. She's yours. You both are... He stopped. You're both safe. Whatever you need, whatever you want, it's yours. Miranda felt tears prick her eyes. I want to rest. Can you just let me rest? Of course. Kael moved to the fire, started building it up. I'll get the midwife and food and whatever else you need. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Miranda looked down at her daughter. What do you think? Can we trust him? The baby yawned. Yeah, I don't know either. Yum. The midwife arrived an hour later, a stern-faced woman named Iris, who took one look at Miranda and immediately started barking orders. She examined both Miranda and the baby, cleaned them up, wrapped the baby in warm blankets, and got Miranda to drink some kind of bitter tea that made her head feel fuzzy. You're lucky to be alive, Iris said. Both of you. Giving birth in those conditions? I didn't have a choice. Clearly, Iris finished bandaging Miranda's torn skin. You'll heal, but you need rest, weeks of it, and proper food. The baby is healthy. Underweight, but healthy. She needs to nurse every few hours. Your milk should come in soon, but until then we'll supplement with goat's milk. Miranda nodded, barely processing the words. Exhaustion was pulling at her, heavy and irresistible. Sleep, Iris ordered. I'll watch the little one. Miranda wanted to argue, wanted to keep the baby close, but her eyes were already closing. She slept for 16 hours straight. When she woke, Kael was sitting by the bed, holding the baby. Miranda's first instinct was panic. She sat up too fast, reaching for her daughter. Kael looked up. Easy. She's fine. Just fed her. Iris showed me how. Miranda stared at him, at the way he cradled the baby like she was made of glass, at the expression on his face, wonder mixed with terror. You look scared, she said. I am. She's so small. What if I hurt her? You won't. How do you know? Because you're holding her like she matters. Kael's jaw tightened. He looked down at the baby. She does matter. More than anything. Miranda watched them for a long moment. Then, quietly, why did you really come looking for me? I told you. The real reason, not the political one. Kael was quiet.
The baby made small sounds in his arms. Finally, he spoke. The morning after you left, I went to your chamber. I was going to, I don't know, apologize maybe, try to fix things. But you were gone, and I found the packed bag, the missing food, and I knew you'd overheard me talking to Gareth. He looked up, and Miranda saw genuine pain in his eyes. I realized I'd driven you away, that my cowardice and my pride had pushed you into running, and then Margot mentioned you'd been sick. Morning sickness, she thought. And I put it together, you were pregnant, and I'd made you feel so worthless that you'd rather risk the wilderness than stay with me. You're right, Miranda said. I would have rather died out there than raise my daughter in a place where she'd be treated like a political prop. I know, and I don't blame you. Cale stood, carefully handed the baby to Miranda. After you left, I started digging. Found out Gareth had been manipulating both of us. He'd been feeding you lies through the servants, that I hated you, that you were just a treaty obligation. And he'd been telling me you wanted nothing to do with me, that you'd asked to be left alone. Miranda's breath caught. What? He wanted us separated. A united alpha pair would have threatened his position as my second. So he drove a wedge between us and made sure it stayed there. That's... Miranda felt rage building. Where is he? Outside. Under guard. I'm sending him away once you're strong enough to travel. You should have killed him. I considered it, but I wanted you to decide his fate. Miranda looked down at her daughter, at this tiny person who'd survived impossible odds. I don't care what happens to him. I just want him gone. Done. The baby started fussing. Miranda adjusted her, trying to get comfortable. We need to name her. Kyle sat down again. Do you have something in mind? Miranda thought about it, about the fire she'd set to escape, about the fierce determination that had kept her moving, about surviving when everything said she should die. Ember, she said. Her name is Ember. Cale smiled. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him. Ember Draven. Ember Hale Draven. Fair enough. He reached out, hesitated. Can I... Miranda took his hand and placed it on the baby's head. Cale's fingers were gentle, reverent. She's got your stubbornness, he said softly. She'll need it, being raised by two people who don't know what they're doing. We'll figure it out. Miranda looked at him. Will we? Because I'm still angry. I'm still hurt, and I don't know if I can trust you. I know, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to prove I can be better, to be the husband and father you both deserve. I've heard words before. Then judge me by my actions. Kyle met her eyes. I'm here. I'm not leaving. And I will spend every day for the rest of my life making up for the months I wasted. Miranda wanted to believe him. Part of her, the part that remembered the storm, the night they'd created Ember, wanted to forgive him right now. But the other part, the part that had survived alone in the wilderness, knew better. Actions, she said, not words. Prove it. I will. So, they stayed at the hunting lodge for 3 weeks while Miranda recovered. Kyle was there every day, learning how to change Ember, how to soothe her when she cried, how to support Miranda as her body healed. He wasn't good at it. He fumbled with diapers. He panicked when Ember cried. He made mistakes constantly, but he kept trying. And slowly, Miranda felt something shift. It happened in small moments. Kyle bringing her tea without being asked. Cale staying up all night with Ember so Miranda could sleep. Kyle reading to the baby in a soft voice, even though Ember couldn't understand the words. One night, Miranda woke to find Kyle sitting by the fire, holding Ember against his chest. He was talking to her quietly. Your mother is the strongest person I've ever met. She crossed a frontier alone while pregnant because she thought it was safer than staying with me. And she was right. I was awful to her, neglectful and cold and stupid. Ember made a small sound. Yeah, I know, but I'm going to do better for both of you. I'm going to build a home where you're safe and loved, where your mother never has to run again, where you grow up knowing you're wanted. His voice cracked. I'm going to be the father you deserve. Even if I don't know how, even if I mess it up, I'll keep trying until I get it right. Miranda's throat closed up. She stayed quiet, watching from the bed. Kyle looked down at Ember. You're named after fire, because your mother is fire, fierce and bright and impossible to contain, and you're going to be just like her, strong and brave and absolutely terrifying. He kissed the top of Ember's head. I can't wait to see who you become.
Miranda wiped her eyes and cleared her throat. Kael looked up, startled. How long have you been awake? Long enough. She held out her arms. Bring her here. Kael stood and brought Ember to the bed. As he laid her down, Miranda caught his wrist. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For trying. Kael's eyes were bright. It's the least I can do. Miranda pulled him down and kissed him. It was soft, careful, nothing like their first kiss. But it felt real. When they pulled apart, Kael looked dazed. What was that for? Actions, Miranda said. I'm starting to see them. On the 4th week, they decided it was time to leave. Miranda was strong enough to travel, and Ember was thriving. They packed up the lodge and prepared for the journey, but not to Frostfang Keep. I want to go home, Miranda said, to my father's territory. I want Ember to know both sides of her heritage. Kael nodded. Okay, we'll go there first. Stay as long as you need. And then? Then we figure out what comes next, together. They rode out the next morning, Ember strapped securely to Miranda's chest. Kael rode beside her, and the guards followed at a respectful distance. As they traveled, word spread. The missing Luna had been found. She'd survived the wilderness. She'd given birth alone and lived. People came out to see them as they passed through settlements. At first, Miranda tensed, expecting judgment or hostility. Instead, they stared at her with awe. Is it true you walked 50 miles pregnant? Did you really escape 3 bounty hunters? They say you set a cabin on fire to get away. Miranda didn't correct the exaggerations. Let them think what they wanted. She knew the truth, that she'd been terrified and desperate and barely surviving. But she'd survived, and that mattered. They reached her father's territory on the 7th day. The guards at the border recognized her immediately and sent word ahead. By the time they reached the main house, her father was waiting outside. He looked older, thinner, but when he saw Miranda, his whole face transformed. Miranda! His voice broke. She slid off the horse, holding Ember carefully, and walked to him. Hi, Dad. He pulled her into a fierce hug, careful of the baby. I thought you were dead. When we heard you disappeared from Frostfang Keep, I thought, I'm okay. We're okay. He pulled back, looking at Ember. Is this your granddaughter, Ember? Her father's eyes filled with tears. He touched Ember's tiny hand, and the baby wrapped her fingers around his. She's beautiful. She's a survivor, like her grandmother. Her father looked at Kael, who dismounted and was standing a few feet away. The two men stared at each other. Finally, her father spoke. You let my daughter run into the wilderness. I did, Kael said, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. You should. I know, but I'm here to make it right, to give them both the life they deserve. Her father studied him. Then he looked at Miranda. What do you want? Miranda thought about it, about everything she'd been through, everything she'd survived. I want Ember to grow up in a world where she's not a political pawn, where she's loved for who she is, not what she represents. I want to build something better than what we had. Can you do that with him? Her father nodded at Kael. Miranda looked at Kael, at the man who'd failed her and was now desperately trying to fix it. I think so. If he keeps his promises. I will, Kael said. Every single one. Her father nodded slowly. Then you're welcome here, both of you, for as long as you need. That night, they had dinner as a family. Miranda sat with Ember in her arms, Kael beside her, her father across the table. They talked about the future, about rebuilding, about creating a new alliance built on trust instead of treaties. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Miranda felt hope, real solid hope that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. Hope was a fragile thing. Miranda had learned that the hard way. But sitting at her father's table with Ember sleeping in her arms and Kael's hand resting on her shoulder, she let herself hold on to it anyway. The next morning brought reality crashing back. A rider arrived at dawn, mud-splattered and exhausted. One of Kael's men. He dismounted in the courtyard and immediately asked for the Alpha. Kael met him outside. Miranda watched from the window, Ember tucked against her chest. The conversation was brief, urgent. Kael's expression darkened with each word. When the rider finished, Kael stood very still for a moment. Then he turned and came back inside. What happened? Miranda asked. There's unrest at Frostfang Keep. The council's divided. Some want to honor the treaty. Others are calling the marriage invalid since you left. Miranda's stomach dropped. Invalid? They're saying you abandoned your post, that it's grounds for annulment. Who's saying that? Marcus Thorne. He's always wanted more power. With me gone and Gareth disgraced, he's making his move. Her father appeared in the doorway. How bad is it? Bad enough that if I don't return soon, there could be a challenge for leadership. Then go, Miranda said. Kale looked at her. I'm not leaving you again. You have to. Your pack needs you. You need me. I survived 3 months in the wilderness alone. I think I can handle a few weeks here with my father. She adjusted Ember. Go deal with your council. Prove to them that the marriage stands, that I'm not going anywhere. Miranda. Kael. She met his eyes. If you want this to work, you need to show them we're a united front. That means handling the political mess while I recover. We'll join you when Ember's strong enough to travel. He didn't like it. She could see the war on his face, duty versus desire. Finally, he nodded. 2 weeks. I'll have everything settled in 2 weeks. Make it 3. Ember needs time. 3 weeks. Then you come to Frostfang Keep and we do this properly. Properly? A real ceremony, not a business transaction. Something that shows everyone, both packs, that this marriage is real. Miranda felt something warm bloom in her chest. Okay. Kael kissed her forehead. Then he leaned down and kissed Ember's tiny head. I'll be back for both of you. I promise. He left that afternoon, taking most of the guards with him. Miranda stood in the courtyard watching him ride away and tried not to feel like she was losing something she'd just gotten back. Her father came to stand beside her. You trust him? I'm learning to. That's not an answer. Miranda looked down at Ember. He could have taken her. Could have declared me unfit and claimed custody. He has the power and the political justification. But he didn't. He gave me the choice. Choice isn't the same as trust. No, but it's a start. The 3 weeks passed slowly. Miranda focused on recovering, on learning how to be a mother, on rebuilding her strength. Her father's pack welcomed her back with cautious warmth. They remembered her as the girl who'd been sacrificed for peace. Now she was the woman who'd survived the impossible. People brought gifts, clothes for Ember, food for Miranda, stories about their own survival, their own struggles. One woman, Sarah, who'd lost 2 sons in the war, brought a hand-knitted blanket. For the little one, may she never know the cold you felt. Miranda accepted it with tears in her eyes. Thank you. No, thank you. You ended the war, paid a price none of us could, and you're still here. That matters. The sentiment was echoed by others. Slowly, Miranda realized something had shifted. She wasn't just the treaty bride anymore. She was a symbol of something else. Resilience, strength, survival against the odds. It was uncomfortable. She didn't feel strong. She felt like someone who'd stumbled through darkness and gotten lucky. But she wore the title anyway, because Ember deserved a mother who owned her power, who didn't shrink from what she'd accomplished. On the 18th day, her father brought her news. There's been word from Frostfang Keep. Miranda looked up from feeding Ember. What kind of word? Kael's consolidated his power. Marcus Thorne tried to challenge him for leadership. It didn't go well. Is Marcus dead? No. Exiled, along with 3 council members who supported him. The rest fell in line. Miranda absorbed this. And the marriage? Declared valid and binding by unanimous council vote. Anyone who questions it is considered an enemy of the peace. That's good? Her father smiled. That's politics. But yes, it's good. Kale secured his position. Now he's waiting for you. Miranda looked down at Ember, 3 weeks old and already the center of a political storm. Is she ready for this? Is any child ready for the life they're born into? Her father sat down beside her. You can't protect her from everything. You can only teach her to be strong enough to handle it. Like you taught me? I tried, though you seemed to teach yourself most of it. Miranda laughed softly. Stubbornness. I got that from you. Guilty. He touched Ember's hand. She'll need it. Being the child of 2 packs, the symbol of their alliance. It's a heavy burden. Then we make it lighter. We change the system so she's not just a symbol, so she's a person. You think you can do that? Miranda thought about the cabin burning behind her, about jumping off a ravine, about giving birth alone in the snow. I think if I can survive what I survived, I can do anything. They left for Frostfang Keep on the 21st day. Miranda rode with Ember strapped securely to her chest, her father and a small escort accompanying them. The journey took 4 days, slower than it might have been because they stopped frequently for Ember. As they approached the fortress, Miranda felt her chest tighten. The last time she'd seen these walls, she'd been fleeing them in the dark. Now she was returning as... what? The Luna? Kale's wife? Ember's mother? All of it. None of it. She didn't know anymore. Kyle met them at the gates. He looked different, harder somehow, more settled in his authority. But when he saw Miranda, his whole face softened. You came. I said I would. He helped her dismount, careful of Ember. Then he turned to her father. Thank you for keeping them safe. Her father nodded. Their family, it's what you do. Kale led them inside. The keep looked the same, cold stone, narrow windows, heavy doors. But something felt different. The servants who passed nodded to Miranda respectfully. The guards acknowledged her. Even the air felt less hostile. What did you do? She asked Kale quietly. Made some changes, starting with a new rule. Anyone who disrespects the Luna disrespects me. And I don't tolerate disrespect. You can't force people to like me. No. But I can force them to treat you with the dignity you deserve. The rest they'll figure out on their own. They reached the main hall. The council was assembled, fewer members than before, Miranda noticed. Kyle had clearly cleaned house. He addressed them formally. The Luna has returned, along with my daughter Ember. I expect all of you to welcome them appropriately. One by one, the council members stepped forward. They bowed. They offered words of congratulations. Some seemed genuine. Others were clearly going through the motions. Miranda accepted it all with calm grace, even though her heart was pounding. This was a test. She knew it. They were waiting to see if she'd crack under pressure, if she'd prove herself unworthy. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. When the last council member finished, an older woman stepped forward. Miranda recognized her. Margot, the head housekeeper. Luna, Margot said, and her voice was warmer than Miranda had ever heard it. We failed you before. I failed you. I should have made you feel welcome. Should have stood against those who wanted you isolated. I didn't, and I'm sorry. The apology caught Miranda off guard. Thank you. If you'll have me, I'd like to serve you properly now, to help make this place a home for you and your daughter. Miranda looked at Kyle. He nodded slightly. Your choice. I'd like that, Miranda said, but I have conditions. Margot blinked. Conditions? I'm not going to be a decorative Luna who just exists. I want to be involved. In the household decisions, in the pack business, in everything. If I'm going to be here, I'm going to matter. A murmur went through the council. Kale's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Margot considered it. Then she bowed her head. As you wish, Luna. The ceremony Kyle had promised happened 3 days later. This time, it was different. They held it outside, in the courtyard, where both packs could attend. No cold stone hall, no forced silence. This was a celebration. Miranda wore a dress that actually fit, deep blue with silver embroidery. Her father walked her forward. Kyle waited at the center, and when he saw her, his eyes went bright. The officiant spoke, but Miranda barely heard the words. She was too focused on Kyle's face, on the way he was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. When it came time for the vows, Kyle spoke first. I, Kyle Draven, take you, Miranda Hale, as my wife, not because of a treaty, not because of politics, but because you're the strongest person I've ever met, because you survived what would have killed most people, because you gave me a daughter and a second chance I don't deserve. I promise to spend every day earning your trust, to build a home where you're safe, to be the partner and father you both need. His voice cracked on the last words. Miranda's throat was tight. She took a breath and spoke her own vows. I, Miranda Hale, take you, Kale Draven, as my husband. Not because I have to, but because I choose to.
Because you're learning to be better. Because you're fighting for us when you could have walked away. I promise to be honest with you, to challenge you when you're wrong, to stand beside you as an equal, not a subordinate, and to build something new with you, something neither of our packs has seen before. The crowd was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Soon the whole courtyard was applauding, cheering. Kael kissed her. It was soft and fierce at the same time, a promise and a question all at once. When they pulled apart, Miranda whispered, "Don't make me regret this." "I won't. I swear." The weeks that followed were hard. Adjusting to life at Frostfang Keep, navigating the politics, learning to balance being a mother with being a Luna, all of it was exhausting. But Miranda had survived worse. She started attending council meetings. At first, the members were uncomfortable. They'd never had a Luna participate before. But Miranda didn't care about their comfort. She asked questions. She challenged decisions. She made it clear that she wasn't going to sit quietly while men decided her life. Kael supported her. When council members protested, he shut them down. "The Luna speaks with my authority. If you have a problem with that, leave." None of them left. Slowly, grudgingly, they accepted her presence. And some, like Margot and a few of the younger council members, actually started listening to her ideas. Miranda proposed changes, small ones at first: better treatment for servants, fair wages for workers, resources for families who'd lost members in the war. "We can't keep operating like we're at war," she argued in one meeting. "The war is over. We need to rebuild. That means investing in our people, not just our defenses." An older council member, Thomas, scoffed. "That's naive." "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, the old way almost destroyed both our packs. Maybe naive is better than suicidal." Thomas had no response to that. Kael backed her proposals. One by one, they were implemented. And slowly, Frostfang Keep started to change. Ember grew. She was a quiet baby, watchful and alert. Miranda would catch her staring at things, shadows on the wall, faces, the fire, like she was trying to figure out how the world worked. "She's smart," Kael said one night, holding her while Miranda caught up on correspondence. "Scary smart. She gets that from me. Definitely not from me. I'm just good at hitting things." Miranda laughed. "You're selling yourself short." "Am I?" He adjusted Ember in his arms. "I made so many mistakes. With you. With everything. You're making up for it." "I hope so." He looked down at Ember. "I want her to grow up in a world where she's not defined by the circumstances of her birth, where she can be whoever she wants to be. Then we build that world." "You make it sound easy." "It's not. But we've done harder things." Kael met her eyes. "Have we?" Miranda thought about the wilderness, the cold, the fear, giving birth alone. "Yes, we have." 6 months after they'd returned to Frostfang Keep, Miranda received a letter from Helen, the woman who'd taken her in at the frontier settlement. She opened it carefully, Ember playing on a blanket nearby. "Dear Mira, or should I say Luna, I hope this letter finds you well. I heard about your return to Frostfang Keep and wanted to reach out. The settlement misses you, though we're glad you're safe. Ethan came back a few weeks ago. He told us what happened, the fire, the escape, everything. He's ashamed of what he did. Says the money wasn't worth it. He's working to make amends, but I thought you should know. Also, I wanted to thank you. Your story has inspired a lot of people out here, women especially. They see what you did and realize they're stronger than they thought. You gave them hope. Stay safe. And if you ever need a place away from politics, our door is always open." With affection, Helen Miranda folded the letter, something warm spreading through her chest. She'd never thought of herself as inspiring, just desperate and lucky. But maybe that was enough. Maybe survival itself was a form of victory. The real test came in the 8th month. A delegation from a neighboring pack arrived requesting an audience. They were having border disputes, resource shortages, internal conflicts. They wanted Frostfang Keep's help. Kael called a council meeting. Miranda attended, as always. But this time, when the discussion started, it quickly devolved into the same old arguments. Might makes right, territorial dominance, show of force. Miranda listened for 10 minutes.
Then she stood up. This is exactly what got us into a decades-long war. The room went quiet. One of the visiting delegates, a burly man named Eric, frowned. Excuse me? You're approaching this like it's a competition, like the goal is to win. But nobody wins in prolonged conflict. Both sides just lose slowly. With respect, Luna, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I lived through it. I was the price paid to end a war nobody could win. So when I say this approach is broken, I'm speaking from experience. Eric's jaw tightened. Then what do you suggest? Miranda looked at Kael. He nodded. Go ahead. Partnership, not dominance. You're having resource shortages. So are we. Instead of fighting over what exists, we work together to create more. Joint hunting grounds, shared trade routes, combined defenses against external threats. That's different. I know. But different is what we need. The old ways almost destroyed us all. Maybe it's time to try something new. The room was silent. Then, surprisingly, one of Kael's council members spoke up. The Luna makes a good point. We've been operating on the assumption that power is finite, but cooperation could expand what's possible. Another council member nodded. It's worth considering. Eric looked uncomfortable, but he didn't immediately reject the idea. I'd need to discuss it with my alpha. Of course, Miranda said. Take your time. But think about what you want your pack's future to look like. Do you want to keep fighting over scraps? Or do you want to build something better? The meeting ended shortly after. When everyone had left, Kael pulled Miranda aside. That was risky. Was it wrong? No, it was brilliant. But you're pushing against centuries of tradition. Good. The tradition is broken. Kael laughed and kissed her forehead. You're terrifying, you know that? I've been told. 3 weeks later, Eric's pack agreed to the partnership. It was small at first, a joint hunting expedition, a trial trade agreement. But it worked. Both packs benefited. Word spread. Other packs started reaching out, curious about this new approach. Some were skeptical. Others were desperate enough to try anything. Miranda and Kyle worked together, navigating the politics, building alliances based on mutual benefit rather than fear. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks. Some packs rejected the idea outright. Others tried to take advantage. But slowly, steadily, things changed. And at the center of it all was Ember. She was walking now, tottering around the keep on unsteady legs, babbling in a language only she understood. People watched her with a mixture of awe and hope. The child born in the wilderness, the symbol of a new way forward. Miranda refused to let them turn her daughter into just a symbol, but she also recognized the power of what Ember represented. One afternoon, she found Kael in his study, staring at a map of the territories. What are you thinking? She asked. About the future. About what we're building. Miranda came to stand beside him. Scared? Terrified. What if we mess this up? Then we fix it. That's what people do. Kael turned to look at her. How are you so sure? Because I've already survived the worst. Everything else is just details. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. I love you. I should have said it sooner, but I'm saying it now. I love you. Miranda's breath caught. I love you too. Even though you're an idiot sometimes. Most of the time. Most of the time, she agreed. They stood there holding each other while Ember played on the floor nearby. Outside, the keep was changing. The packs were changing. The whole world was shifting towards something new. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was theirs. 2 years later, Miranda stood in the courtyard of Frostfang Keep, watching Ember chase a butterfly. The little girl was laughing, her dark hair flying behind her, completely unaware that she'd become the face of a movement. The alliance Miranda had started had grown. 6 packs now operated under a cooperative agreement. Trade was flourishing. Conflicts were being resolved through negotiation rather than violence. It wasn't utopia. There were still disputes, still people who resisted change, but the foundation was solid. Kael came to stand beside her. She's fast. She gets that from me, too. You're claiming all her good traits? Until she does something that annoys me. Then she's all you. Kael laughed. He did that more now, smiled more. The hard edges that had defined him when they'd first met had softened. I was thinking, he said, we should do something to commemorate what happened, not just the alliance, but your journey. My journey? You walked into the wilderness pregnant and came back with a daughter and a revolution. People should remember that. Miranda was quiet for a moment. I didn't do it to be remembered. I did it because I didn't have a choice. But you survived. And that choice, to keep going when everything said you should quit, that matters. It inspired people. It inspired me. Miranda watched Ember catch the butterfly, examine it with careful fingers, then let it go. Okay, but not a statue or anything ridiculous. What then? A school for girls from all the allied packs, teaching them survival skills, negotiation, leadership, everything I wish I'd known before I was thrown into this. Kael's eyes lit up. That's perfect. And we call it Ember Hall. So she knows she was born into something bigger than politics. She was born into possibility. Ember Hall it is. They announced the school at the next Alliance gathering. The response was overwhelming. Families volunteered their daughters. Teachers stepped forward. Resources poured in. Within 6 months, Ember Hall opened its doors. Miranda taught some of the classes herself. Wilderness survival, strategic thinking, self-defense. She'd stand in front of these young girls, many of them looking at her with the same awe people had shown when she'd first returned from the frontier, and tell them the truth. I'm not a hero. I was scared and desperate, and I made a lot of mistakes. But I didn't quit. And that's the lesson I want you to learn. Not that you should be perfect, but that you should keep going even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The girls would nod, soaking it in, and Miranda would see herself in their faces, the uncertainty, the determination, the fierce will to survive. 5 years after Ember's birth, Miranda stood on the wall of Frostfang Keep, watching the sun set over the frontier. The wilderness that had almost killed her stretched to the horizon, beautiful and deadly. Ember was beside her, now old enough to appreciate the view. Mama, is that where I was born? Out there somewhere, yes. Was it scary? Miranda thought about how to answer. It was the scariest thing I've ever done, but also the most important. Why? Because it taught me that I was stronger than I thought, and it gave me you. Ember leaned against her. Tell me the story again. You've heard it 100 times. I want to hear it again. So Miranda told it, the cold, the hunger, the moment she jumped off the ravine, the birth in the snow. She didn't soften it or make it prettier than it was. When she finished, Ember was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want to be brave like you. You already are. You were born in the wilderness and you survived. Everything after that is just practice. Kael joined them on the wall. What are we talking about? Mama's story, Ember said. My favorite story. He wrapped his arms around both of them. The one where the Luna saved herself and changed everything. Miranda leaned back against him, feeling the weight of Ember against her side. The solid warmth of Kael behind her. This, right here, was what she'd fought for. Not power, not politics, just this. Family, safety, choice. I love you both, she said quietly. We love you too, Ember replied immediately. Kael kissed the top of her head. Always. They stood there as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire. And Miranda thought about all the paths that had led her here. The forced marriage, the isolation, the desperate flight into the wilderness, the birth that should have killed her, the journey back. Every single choice had been impossible. Every single moment had felt like it would break her. But she'd survived. And in surviving, she'd built something better than survival. She'd built a life worth living. The frontier stretched before her, still wild, still dangerous. But she wasn't afraid of it anymore. She'd walked into that wilderness as someone disposable and walked out as someone essential. She'd proven them all wrong. And in doing so, she'd proven herself right. Miranda Hale Draven, Luna of Frostfang Keep, Mother of Ember, Architect of the Alliance. She wore the titles like armor now, not chains. Behind her the keep glowed with warmth and light. Ahead the wilderness waited, patient and eternal. She'd conquered both, and she was just getting started.